All right, hello again, Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College, going over the SAMS Teach Yourself Bootstrap in 24 Hours text. We're in the middle of Chapter 12, and I broke this up into 2 lessons because I had to leave for a couple minutes. So, we're picking it back up again, and it says split button drop-downs. Our drop-down menu is created on a button group that make it appear to be a single button with a drop-down menu on one side. To create this, you need to use a button group with 2 buttons, an action button with text on it, and a drop-down that has just the caret icon. All right, so the author says, if you read Chapter 11, you already know how to do some of this stuff. All right. So when we look here, let's take a look at the example that's right here. That's listing 12.4 on page 187. So as I have been doing, I'm just going to continue to, as I go on in here, I'm just going to continue to comment things out as we go on. Trying to put a little semblance of order in here. It's not great. Well, let's see what that did. Choose one, you click. Okay, we see a few different things there. It's sectioned off, so there's section 1 with 3 items, section 2 with 2 items, and there's a divider in between. Now, not only can you have drop downs, but as mentioned starting on page 188, you can have what are referred to as drop ups. All right, so let's take a look at that. And the big thing to worry about drop ups, as mentioned in the caution here that's on page 189, is to leave yourself enough room to actually put whatever it is you're working on in there. And my hope almost is that I don't leave myself enough room here, so you can see exactly what I mean. So let's save and try this one and see if indeed that works. Doesn't look different until you click. Then there's the drop up, and you can't see it because it's actually appearing up here. All right. So let's put this in. Let's see if we can fix it. All right. So we'll come back up to the top, and in our head section here, before we have the bootstrap stuff, we'll put a style tag, body, and we'll put in here padding top 200, not 2100, 200 pixels. Okay, and then we'll finish that. All right, now let's take a look. So you can see it's been moved down. You can hopefully see too why I moved it down. Could have even moved it down a little bit more than that. So probably about 225 pixels would have been even more ideal. Now you can see all of it. So that's a drop up menu. And they mention on page 189, be sure to add text or other content above the HTML listing so that it's not cut off by the window. All right, so you've seen it. Let's jump back into nav bars. All right, the middle of page 189. Navigation in web pages is found in the form of navigation bars or nav bars. Bootstrap has specific features for nav bars. Notice Bootstrap nav bars start out collapsed and can't be toggled on and off. Include a place for your brand text or image. Can include buttons, button groups, drop downs, and non-navigation links. allow for forms, including search boxes, can be left or right aligned and fixed at the top or bottom of the screen, and can have an inverted option. So you see an example right there, and let's take a look at this example. So I'm going to, again, comment out everything that we've been working with in here thus far. So even this CSS that I added right there. All right. So I'm not going to move everything over. There's just too much to play with there. So there it is. Okay. Now, it's not going to look exactly the way that it looks in the book on page 190 because they have the actual dandelion graphic there where I don't have it. But I think hopefully at least the idea is there and it makes sense to you. Bootstrap cannot tell how wide the nav is going to be, and if it gets wider than the current window, it'll wrap to a second line, which is a bad thing and not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing because it does allow you to show all of your content. It is a bad thing because it looks rather amateurish. All right, and the other thing too is when you look at this, notice that when we start moving this in, watch what happens to this. Gets to a certain point, you don't see it anymore, but there it is. Okay. Let's comment this out as we have been doing. Do mention here on page 189, at the bottom of the page, the author mentions so he talks about nav bars here, shows you the example, watch out for the nav bar length, etc. And I actually am farther down than I wanted to be. I wanted to be right there. When you're building nav bars in Bootstrap, it's important to remember that Bootstrap is a mobile-first approach. So it's going to look like this in a narrow window, what we just looked at. All right? They do show you a wider example if you want to see that. So again, we can grab all this and do the same thing that's in here. Good morning. And if you look at what was in here previously, here's what it looked like. Okay? And if we look at what we've just done here, okay, it's stretched out a little bit more. All right. As we move our way on here, I'm on the bottom of page 191, navbar headers and brands, and as it says, a navbar header is a section or a piece of the navigation seen by most users. All right, so if we do come in here, as they mentioned, you could add a logo, etc. if you want in here. So we'll put this in, but again, it's not going to look like much. There is no graphic in there, etc., but you can at least see the idea of what it would look like. Okay, so there it is. Toggling the navigation on page 192. As the author mentions, to be responsive, navigation is normally going to be collapsed and hidden in mobile browsers. You've already seen this. All right. So they show building a navigation toggle button. Oops. Don't know if it'll help to actually take this and put it at the bottom or not. So I'm going to try it like that and see what happens. Let's look at the text. So what we added was in here. The button uses the navbar toggle and the collapse classes to indicate this is a toggle button. All right, and it should be shown there in the collapsed state. Don't know if I remove the other stuff that we have in there, if that would help or hurt, or do nothing. It's not showing anything. Not sure why. But when we do add the actual text later, what we should see is what's shown here on page 193 in the text, and that is this. All right. Links, text, buttons, and forms in nav bars, you can add just about anything you want. As it says, most nav bars are made up of these elements. Adding links to the nav bar with an unordered list. Here is an example. It's a C section 1211 for an entire example. You'll notice this is getting bigger and it's getting much more complex as we set it up. So let's look at this entire thing that we have in here. Let's just we'll create a brand new example. And we'll call this nav example 2. All right, see the down arrow. You can see the contact us that's here. You can also see that it's getting to be a little bit narrow as far as the room that we have left to work with. You can change colors. The easiest way to change colors is basically invert the class using the nav bar inverse class. So if I go back to the previous example we just had, and where we have the nav bar here, I add a nav bar inverse. It goes from this to this. All right. Pretty obvious when you take a quick look at it, I believe. You can also work with the colors and the alignment. So we're on page 197 here. With the alignment, notice what it says. Bootstrap lets you easily adjust your navigation position with using certain classes here, because if you don't, notice what can happen. Your text can run right up into your menu, into your navigation menu. All right. A couple more things quickly to talk about here. This is the bottom of page 198 and going on to 199 and 200, and that is breadcrumbs and pagination. So if we look at breadcrumbs right here, they give an example of a breadcrumb, and you really and truly should know what breadcrumbs are. They basically show you a path to where you've gone thus far. All right. And here's an example. So the author says breadcrumbs create a site hierarchy that allows customers to discover where they are quickly and easily. Bootstrap automatically adds separators to your breadcrumb links. Turn your ordered list into breadcrumbs with the class of breadcrumb. All right, so let's grab this and let's look at the LI that we had in the previous example. Grab one of these right here. All right, so I'm going to put this in. So where previously we had all of this stuff, it's going to be interesting because I'm mixing and matching here where you really shouldn't do that, but we'll take a look and see what it looks like. there, right there, is the breadcrumb. All right. Standard bootstrap pagination is shown on the bottom of page 198 and the top of page 199. Pagination gives links to multiple pages of content. There are two different ways that you can do it. One way, as they mention here on the top where I am right now, to create pagination, write a list of links to the pages and add the .pagination class to it. So we can put this kind of stuff in here. The problem that we're going to have, again, is there's still a lot of other stuff on the site here that is here or is not here, so that's going to goof things up. Oops. But I'm going to just still come in and paste that in just so we can see what the heck it looks like. Okay. It's pretty obvious here with pagination what's going on, I believe. And you can have the links in different places. They do mention this in the book. They show you examples here in figure 1211. I'm not going to go through that right now. I'd like to finish up the chapter by talking a little bit about list groups, which starts on page 200. And as the author mentions, that list groups are a component you can use to display simple and complex lists, rather. So here's a list group in here with some badges. So let's take a look at that. All right, there are the badges, and here is the list group. See, it looks like we've added an indent or some kind of justification over here to move the first one to the right. And they have other examples also. Again, my examples aren't going to look nearly the way as nice as the ones they have in the book, because the author has here the particular images, etc., where I don't have those in here right now. But you can see the examples still flow pretty much as we're working our way through here. Okay? All right, that's the chapter. We went over some different navigation menus, different ways to navigate. I do want to mention, I've said this to you before, if I have time, I'm going to go out to, what is it, Webcode? I don't remember. I always forget if it's Webcode Geeks or Java Webcode Geeks, but we'll see. Yep, that's it. And here under Bootstrap, what you'll notice, there's tabs, popover, panel, tooltip, layout, form, drop-down, table. There's the nav bar. All right, so I hope to have time to be able to grab all this and go over their particular example that's in here. So just let's see what that one looks like as an example here. The bad thing is if I do it like this, I'm going to get those line numbers. So let's, at the end, they typically download, you can download the code. There we go. So, for example, with this example, there's a lot of the stuff that you've already seen. Okay? There's the drop down, there's a link, there's another drop down, submit, search, etc. Okay? So they're very similar to examples we've already gone over, but I hope to have time to go over all of those. We'll see how it goes. As far as the Q&A, what's the difference between a nav element and a nav bar element? They're similar. It says the easiest way to think of them is this. The nav class is for any navigation structure you might have on a page. The nav bar class is used almost exclusively for primary site navigation. Okay, second, the author says there, and I'm on page 206, and I can turn the page. Here we go. I use Bootstrap 2 and notice the nav list and nav header classes have been removed. What do I use instead? And it says there is no equivalent because as things go on, hopefully they've gotten better. All right. So let's take a look at the quiz on the bottom, or on pages 206 and 207. Number 1, what elements can you put a nav class on? The answer is D, any block level element. Number 2, what is the difference between a .nav-pill and a .nav-tab? The answer is A, the pill creates a button for each navigation element, and the tab creates a tab. Number 3, what does the drop-down header do? The answer is C, it creates a header inside the drop-down menu. Number 4, true or false, this is the correct HTML to create a drop-down button. And you can see it right there. All right, the answer is false. Number 5, how is a split drop-down different than a button group? The answer is D, all of the above. Button groups cannot contain drop-down menus. Button groups must contain more than 2 buttons. Split drop-downs do not use buttons. All right, so the answer is not all of the above. They are not different. They're the same. All right, which of the following elements is allowed in a nav bar? Number 6. The answer is D, all of the above, so you can put any of those in. Number 7, why should you create collapsible navigation? The answer is A, navigation that collapses in smaller devices is more responsive and easier to use. We've talked about before the fact that Bootstrap, again, is mobile first. All right. Number 8, which HTML classes should you put the breadcrumb class on? The answer is B, UL or OL tags. Number 9, which of the following will create a pagination for the system? The answer is E, which is numbers 1 and 3. And finally, 10, where do badges get positioned in list groups? As you saw earlier, they're automatically positioned to the right. That finishes up Chapter 12. I'll be back very shortly to talk about Chapter 13, Bootstrap Utilities.